in the chat room. Tell us where you're joining us from, and just use one word to describe how your day has been. Just one word to describe how your day has been. My own day has been interesting. Good evening, Elvis, and welcome. You just tell us where you're joining us from. You can just type it in the chat room. Tell us where you're joining us from. Use one word to describe how your day has been. Good evening, Kemer. Welcome. Tell us where you're joining us from. Lagos, Abuja, New York. Just use one word to describe how your day has been. Just one word. Good evening. Hi, everyone. Good evening.
Hello.
Good evening. So 1 more minute and then we would begin. We'll kick this webinar off. Good evening, Philemon. Good evening. Hope your day has been good. Your day has been interesting. if you can, leave a message in the chat room, tell us where you're joining us from, and just with one word, tell us how your day has been. Okay, good evening, everyone. I think we have a speaker here, so I'm sure we'll have a lot more people joining us as we go on. Let me share my screen so we could kick this off. All right, so good evening, everyone, and welcome once again to the Cloud Cost Saving Strategies in Times of Economic Uncertainties. It's a mouthful, really. Are we recording? Please, can we make sure we have started recording as well? All right, I think we are. So we'll begin this basically with a very short introduction, just to share why we decided to host the webinar, especially with this topic, right? Because we understand and we've seen a lot of organizations are struggling with profitability. So you could hear organizations having massive turnover, massive traction, but when they look at the bottom line, there's really a disparity there. And we believe that cloud costs is one of the things that can easily be optimized. When I say easily be optimized, I know it seems like, why is this? Sometimes I wonder why this is still I wonder why this is still a global cloud challenge, because there are thousands of tools out there, thousands of webinars like this almost every day, making sure that we optimize our cloud costs. But nevertheless, it's still a challenge. And our aim is to help businesses and founders improve and ensure profitability by reducing their operating expenditure, especially when it comes to cloud costs. And of course, who better than to be a keynote speaker for when you're talking about cloud cost optimization than Ewere. Ewere has been singing and beating this drum ever since when it comes to cloud cost optimization. And very soon we're going to hear from him. So we'll just walk through briefly what the agenda of the webinar would be. We'll begin with an introduction, which we've just done. We're going to have a few polls. We want to understand what you're going through. We want to understand some challenges. We want to understand who our audience is and who we're speaking with. And then we'll get into the keynote session by Ewere, and then we'll get into a Q&A session. And then we'll have a very brief Wendu demo. Wendu is a product by Cloudplexo that helps you optimize your cloud costs and also improve your cloud security posture. And then we'll get into the conclusions and thank yous for joining. So we're going to begin our first poll. So in this poll, we just really want to know who our audience is. We want to know, first of all, want to know what cloud service providers they use. So please, when the polls come up, please respond with as much information as you do have. We want to know what cloud service providers you use. I think the poll should be up now. Want to know what cloud service provider you use. If you're running a multi-cloud environment, then please you can select more than one. And also want to get a good idea of the demographics. Want to get a good idea of demographics. All right, I think I should be able to run this poll myself. Want to have a good idea of the demographics, and also want to know what the meeting objective is. Sorry, just give me a second. I'm going to stop sharing now. All right, so we'll move on. We'll come back to the polls afterwards, but I think, yeah, we'll come back to the polls afterwards. At this time, let me introduce Ewere so that he can come and tell us a bit more. Where we'll be speaking basically on three major topics: identifying cloud cost optimization opportunities. If you cannot identify any cloud cost optimization opportunities, you cannot optimize the cost. And he'll also be speaking about right sizing the cloud resources and also leveraging automation to reduce manual work. Ewere, over to you. Glad to have you here with us.
Hello, hello, hello. Nice to be here again. Just want to confirm my audio. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can.
All right, that's great. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Ewere. Thank you for that introduction. David, my name is Ewere. I'm AWS community hero here in Lagos, Nigeria, first in Africa. And I'm also an author. Like to talk about cloud a lot, like you said, active on LinkedIn and Twitter. So today we'll be talking about something pretty interesting, which is cloud cost. Cloud cost is a very interesting topic that is usually very difficult to talk about. And unfortunately, it's sad because it actually affects every single business. So even if you are not using the cloud, I would like to encompass this as more or less infrastructure costs. So and what does it take for you to run your business holistically? The services you pay online, the resources you use, are you using them optimally? I think that's like the basic question to ask. Are they optimal? Are you using the resources you need, or you just have resources all over the place and you do not really understand how to track them and know what's going on with them per time? So what we're going to discuss is that you can actually find a way to manage these resources better, understand how the billing is going, and what to do to ensure that you don't get overbilled. I was in a session last week where people were asking me questions about, AWS. That AWS is a cloud provider that takes people's money, So I laughed and I said, well, you could also say that, but the truth is, how did they take your money? What really happened? Which is one problem people also have. I know friends who have run away from the cloud because of the same issue, where they put in their card details, and after 2 months, they get billed and they don't know why they got billed and where the bill came from. And they just get frustrated and they leave the cloud. They don't want to learn about the cloud anymore. But this session is going to help us understand what to do and help us to understand cloud billing. So this cuts across whether you're an enthusiast, you just got into cloud and you want to know how to work your bills properly, or you're an organization who already use cloud computing services. And it's always a problem for you to understand how these guys are charging you money. At the end of the month, you see $7,000, $10,000, $8,000. And I know a company who practically left the cloud and went back on premise because they just want where they can see and understand that, okay, this server is costing me 10,000 naira. Okay, at the end of the month, I pay 10,000 naira. Not AWS will tell you, okay, when you consume so, you're going to pay so amount of money. At the end of the month, you see a different figure. It can be very irritating. And for strict businesses where, let's assume you already have the budgets for the year set, strict budgets, infrastructure costs X amount of money. And then at the end of the month, AWS comes and gives you more than half of that bill or double that bill. And you're like, what's going on here? So it's always the problem for businesses. So first of all, I'm going to first start with introducing cloud billing. So what is cloud billing or costing in the cloud? This basically means what it costs you, what you pay for every resource you run on the cloud. So there's no way I can talk about cloud without talking about my new book. Sorry. So in my book, Dictionary, I talked about the basic definition of what cloud is. And cloud is basically should I call it a statement for a computer that is in a remote location that you don't have direct access to. You only have what to call remote access to. So for example, when you send a WhatsApp message, you have no idea where that message is going to, but you know it's going to get to the destination of whoever you sent it to. So that's exactly what cloud is. You have no idea how how the machine or the server works, but you know you can have access to it. So the fact that you are renting that space, you have to pay for that space. That's basically what cloud is about. But when we talk about billing, the billing part comes where you need to understand how the renting works. Okay. So before now, what we're used to is if you want to get a computer or you want to get a server to run your applications, your services, you meet a company like Dell, okay, one of these big companies, and say, oh, you know what, can you give me a server of this specification? And you pay upfront, okay, you pay a huge amount of money upfront, and they deliver these computers to you, okay. You manage the other resources by yourself. But cloud is saying, you know what, you don't need to do that anymore. You can just rent some space. We have a huge farm of so many servers, and then you can rent a space within that huge amount, and you pay us gradually for it. That's exactly how the cloud billing model works. But within this model, it has subsections, and I'll be breaking down the subsections. But first of all, let's know that what happens in the cloud is that you're renting space, okay? You're renting space where a lot of other people are also renting the same space, just the way you rent a home, okay? Where you pay rent every month or every year, depending on the part of the world you reside. That's exactly what happens in the cloud. A business comes and says, okay, we can provide millions and terabytes of spaces and server. You can take 5 gigabytes from that space for whatever you want to do. Another company can take 2 terabytes for whatever they want to do. But you pay based on the capacity you are renting. Now, that will take me to the second aspect of what I'm talking about of my talk, which is the basics of billing. Now, when you talk about billing, there is a model that cuts across every cloud provider, including AWS. Okay. And this model is, or these models are basically how the cloud providers make their money because they are renting your space. Okay. And it's categorized into 3 major categories. You have pay per time, you have pay per consumption, and then you have pay per volume. Let me take that again. There are 3 major models of billing that exist in the cloud. You have pay per time, you have pay per consumption, and then you have pay per volume. Now let's take them one after the other. Let's talk about pay per time. Now, what's pay per time? Pay per time is the fact that you are going to say in our space for 2 weeks, you're going to pay X amount of money. That's pay per time. It means that the more time you spend, the more you pay, more or less pay as you go. Okay. When you buy airtime in your phone in Nigeria, that airtime is directly proportional to a certain number of minutes. Okay. So when that minute is elapsed, your airtime is automatically exhausted. That's exactly what pay per time does. But the difference is that pay per time model is postpaid. So it means that you consume before you pay. So that's why people get trapped in the accident of forgetting that, oh, they have something running and they have to stop it or delete it before they get billed. So that's usually the problem people face. Unlike your airtime that is prepaid, it means you have to pay for it before you can use it. Cloud is postpaid. Okay. Postpaid means that you can use it and then you pay later. So people always fall victim of forgetting that they have something running in the cloud and then they leave it for a month because billing happens every month. That's the cycle of billing. And then your card gets charged automatically, and then you're like, what happened? These people have taken my money. Sorry, they didn't take your money. You rented a space and you're going to pay for it at the end of the month. So that's exactly what happened. Okay. But I'll talk about, when we talk about mitigation steps, I'll talk about how you can mitigate that kind of thing from happening. Okay. I have a lot of friends that have called me that have had this problem. So it's actually a common problem, but you can actually mitigate it. And there are various steps you can do that. So back to pay per time. Pay per time basically says for every second or for every, they're usually calculated per half hour. For every half hour you create this particular service or resource, you pay this X amount of money per dollar. So they could say, okay, if you purchase a computer of 500 gig hard disk and 2 gig of RAM, you're going to pay us 50 naira per hour. Okay. So what happens is that if you multiply that 15 naira per hour by the number of hours in a month or in a week, that is the money you are going to pay. Okay. And pay per time is also very, very close to pay per volume or capacity. What that means is you are paying per time, yes, but it also depends on the volume of what you are consuming at that particular point in time. But the crux of pay per time is it runs per time. It means that if you stop that service from running, you will not be charged. Okay. Now, some services that usually run pay per time are, for AWS, the EC2 instances, which is one of the most used services in AWS, which is like your server or your computer, okay, or your virtual machine. Some people call it virtual machine. Amazon calls it EC2. It's just a brand name for a virtual machine or a computer with any kind of operating system you want it to have, Linux, Windows, whatever operating system you choose to have in it. So basically, what happens is when you immediately set up a computer or an EC2 instance or a server and it's running, AWS starts accumulating your bill. Okay. And so also goes with other cloud providers. Okay. They start accumulating your bill. And at the end of the month, your bill is going to accumulate based on the time you have used it. But the good thing about the cloud providers is you can always view your bill per time. So if you want to know how much you have consumed in 2 days, you can check your dashboard, your billing dashboard. If you want to know how much you have consumed in 1 week, you can check your billing dashboards, which is another attitude you can always imbibe in your organization. Don't leave your cloud costs to chance, okay? Create a strategy, create a culture, create a structure that you can always use to check your bills from time to time. In my experience, what I do is every week, okay, I just get into the billing dashboard of my organization and say, okay, how much have we spent so far? And the good thing about this billing dashboards is that they also have what we call forecasted billing. What that means is what you might eventually consume at the end of the month. So it helps you to plan. It helps you to strategize. It helps you to know that, oh, it looks like we'll be spending more at the end of the month. Oh, it looks like we'll be spending less at the end of the month. Now, with having this armed, you can manage and optimize your costs much better because you are doing that from a place of experience, from a space of data, from a space of information, not assumption. Okay, enough about pay per time. Let's go to another model of billing in the cloud called pay per consumption. Now, pay per consumption, okay, or pay per invocation is another unique billing model. Now, pay per consumption has to do with the number of resources you consume. Okay, now let me give an example. This applies a lot in the serverless world. Now, back to my book again. Sorry about that. Dictionary talks about serverless. So serverless means that when you run applications in the cloud, you don't have to manage the servers themselves. That's the concept of serverless. Serverless does not mean that there's no server. Okay, please, let's take that. Serverless does not mean there's no server. Serverless just means that the cloud provider manages the server for you, secures the server for you, and gives you how you can communicate with the server. Okay, so it's like another layer of abstraction from the virtual machine. For virtual machines, you know you have a server, you have to manage the server, you have to secure the server, you also have to scale the server. Okay, but in serverless, we're saying that you don't manage anything. Okay, you don't even scale anything. You just deploy your applications and you're good to go. Now, because of that model, they can't charge you per time. Okay, they only charge you per what we call invocation or per consumption. So there's a service in AWS called AWS Lambda. There are a couple of other serverless services, but I want to talk about AWS Lambda. Now, Lambda is a service that helps you to deploy applications from different languages, from Java to C# to Python to Node.js. Now, AWS will only charge you when somebody triggers a Lambda function. So if your code does not run, you don't get billed. Okay, so there was a time that serverless was the rage, was the main thing, because it made so much sense that unless you what we call make an API call, or unless you invoke that function, you don't get billed. So your service can just be running or your service can just be dormant. And at the end of the month, your bill is zero. I mean, I ran a website for like a year on AWS and my bill was zero. Okay, which is very possible. Okay, this happens a lot when you use serverless services. Okay, when you use another service like S3, I published an article on S3 I think early this morning about how you can use S3 for secured content. But when you use a service like S3, okay, or CloudFront, all the services I'm calling are serverless services in AWS, you tend to save 90% of your costs. Okay, so this I'm wrapping in cost saving strategy also into methods of billing. Now, the problem with one of the problems with pay-per consumption or pay-per invocation services is that there's usually this barrier of learning. So you really might not see people using those services so much. But understand that pay-per invocation or pay-per consumption services means that you only charge for what you consume. Let's take another service as an example, Amazon S3. So Amazon S3 is a serverless storage service that has unlimited storage. I just say has unlimited storage because no matter what you store in S3, it never gets filled up. But AWS will charge you for the size of data you have in S3. So someone who has 5 kilobytes of files in S3 and somebody who has 7 terabytes of files in S3, you are not going to be charged the same thing. What are they charging you by? The consumption. Okay, they are charging you by the consumption of what you consumed per time. And that's how AWS will charge you for that. And that's how per consumption charging goes. Okay, now let's talk about pay per volume, which is like the last model. So pay per volume is very, very similar to pay per invocation or pay per consumption. The slight difference between them is that pay per volume has to do with also size, okay? And the basic example of pay per volume will be data transfer, okay? Now, in AWS also in other cloud providers, they charge you for data volume. What do you mean by data volume? Every cloud provider has this hidden cost that is always a problem. And that hidden cost is data transfer cost. It's always the pain of every accounting or every accountant in a company where they use a cloud provider. You know, the accountant will call you and say, please, how did this bill come about? And you're like, it's data transfer. They're like, okay, which service did we use it for? Which application? And you're like, all. You're like, I don't understand. Okay, so data transfer is always very evasive and it's very hard to understand, but don't worry, I'm here to break it down for you. This is the rule of thumb. Every traffic that goes into your infrastructure, into your services is free. You are not charged for it. But every traffic that goes out of your organization or out of your applications to communicate with third-party services, okay, you are going to be billed for it. So let me give a very simple example. Let's assume you start a company today. Your company is called ABC.xyz. And what you people do is that you have, let's say, a betting company, okay? You do betting and people come to stakes and they make money out of that. Now, for everybody that goes to your website, if you understand how your website works, it's actually two-way traffic. Okay, so you see how smart these cloud guys can be. It's a two-way traffic. When you go to a website, say abc.xyz.com, okay, which is the betting site, two things happen. You send a request to the server and the server gives you a response. Now, sending a request to the server is like opening a web page. But the problem is that when you try to open a web page, you are downloading data from that website. So it means that for every data you download, the cloud provider will charge you. So if you have 10 million people visiting your website, it means that 10 million people are downloading data from your website. So you will be charged for that. So that is why whenever you have some kind of DDoS attack or some kind of security issues in your AWS account, your data cost is going to rise. Why? Because your applications will have to be downloaded multiple times in different locations at different speeds. So you end up having very high bills. Now, what do you have to do in that scenario? When we get to mitigations, I'll talk more about that. But understand that it is about the volume of data that you consume that will determine how your cost will be, whether it's going to go up or it's going to come down. So a quick recap before I go to the next stage. So the first one I talked about is pay per time. Okay, I mentioned EC2 instances. When you launch an EC2 instance and you leave it running for a while, you're going to be charged for it. Another service that also pay per time is also your volumes. Okay, your ABS volumes. When you leave them running and you don't stop them, you don't delete them, you are going to be charged for it. And then the next I talked about was pay per invocation or pay per consumption. I talked about AWS Lambda as an example, that you can deploy an application as a Lambda function. If you don't trigger that Lambda function, you will not be charged. But when you trigger that function, you'll be charged, and you'll be charged a very minute amount of money. I ran a website for like 2 years and I was paying $0 every month. Why? Because I deployed it with the serverless model and it was efficient, it was fast, and it was easy. Okay. And then the last is pay per volume, where I talked about the data option. Sorry, the data model. Okay, when you download and upload data, and I said data that comes into your cloud infrastructure is free of charge, but data that goes out of your infrastructure, you are charged for it. Okay, let's go to how to mitigate and control your costs. I mentioned one of the methodologies you can apply, which is frequent check-ins. Okay, so you can just set a calendar for yourself. Okay, or set a calendar in your organization where every week, every Friday, you just sit down and look at your bill. Okay, how much have we consumed for the month? What is the forecast for the month? What is consuming more resources? Okay, those are the 3 questions you ask. Number 1, how much have we consumed so far? Number 2, what's the forecast for the month? Okay, forecast means what's the projection between now and the end of the month with the way we are going? And then number 3, which service or services are costing us the most? Now, what these questions will help you do is to know where you can start optimizing your services. And Wendu helps a lot with some of these things I'm mentioning. Wendu gives you a very good analysis of understanding your bills and where they are coming from. So Wendu can even give you this out of the box. So I could just say you should just go to your Wendu UI every week to really know what's going on. Okay. But yeah, that's one of the ways you can understand what is going on. You don't have to wait till the 31st and say, oh my God, these people are charging us $4,000. What did we do this month? No. Sorry, you will always be charged very high amount because you are not closely watching and analyzing your bill every other week. Like I said, it doesn't take a lot, sometimes 30 minutes. Just go to your Wendu UI, look at what is going on, look at the bill, look at the forecast. You see top 10 or top 5 services that are costing you so much, and then you start knowing how to optimize your costs accordingly. That's data helping you to become better in running your business. Because just imagine saving a business of $10,000 or $8,000. That's more like profit coming to the business. Okay, because I told someone that unfortunately, a lot of CEOs are more concerned about how much profit they can make. Sometimes you should also think about how much you can save, because saving money is also more like profit for you, because you could actually redirect what you saved into more investments and also have a lot of money in your organization. Because if you make a lot of money and you spend that money, then there's no profit. So just imagine you make $20,000 every month and you spend $18,000 on your cloud infrastructure. That's your money just going down the drain at the end of the day. So as you make $20,000, you should be able to save at least $8,000. Okay, that means that you are doing better as a business. So the focus for CEOs and top executives should not just be about trying to make a lot of profits, because if you make a lot of profits and your infrastructure is not well managed, your profit will go down into costs of running your cloud infrastructure, which is, I mean, that's just zero at the end of the day. Another way you can also optimize your costs, when I was talking about per volume, is when it comes to data transfer. So this is the secret you can use for data transfer. Number 1, use compression. Okay, compression. So Amazon CloudFront is a serverless service that helps you to it creates like a content delivery network, okay, for you. And obviously, when someone visits your website and you download data, you pay for it. But you can enable compression in CloudFront. What does compression do for you? Instead of sending 5 kilobytes of data to someone, you can send 1 kilobyte of the same data. What will happen is, instead of them to charge you 5 times the size of that data, you pay 1 time the size of that data, saving you a lot of costs in terms of data transfer. Okay. And there are many other compression models that you can employ. Minification for application scripts. Okay. When you do all these things, they will help you to eventually save a lot of money on your data transfer costs. A lot of organizations do not understand this. Okay. Now, secondly, another thing you can do is that just stop using resources that you are not using anymore. Because whether you are using some resources or not, there are certain requests that continue to come to an application that you will continue to entertain, that will continue to cost you money. Okay. So having what we call idle resources running, which Wendu UI can also help you identify, saves you a lot of money too. Okay. You could just have an EC2 instance that you have not been using for a while, just because you are so busy, you forgot about it. And who knows, DDoS attack can come from that machine. And for that 30 minutes or 1 hour, you can be paying as much as $500 or $400 of data transferred from that machine, just because it's an idle resource that was not terminated or deleted. Okay, so that is why I'm going back to the frequent review of your bills. When you review your bills frequently, you know the resources that are idle, you know the resources that are costing you a lot of money, and then you optimize accordingly. So cost is not a one-time operation. Okay, that's another mistake people also make. I will add that as part of the mitigation strategies. You don't just say, oh, we have saved costs, and then you move on. No, it doesn't work that way. As a dynamic organization, you are going to be creating new products and services day in, day out, which will require more server resources day in and day out. What that means is that you need to have a strategy to continue to optimize your resources as your business grows. It's not a one-time thing. Okay, and then that will lead me to another point, which is taking advantage of cost optimization models in the cloud. Okay, now someone will say, oh, we have reserved instances, you know, we do reserved, we do reserved. Trust me, it doesn't end there. Okay, when is your reservation tenure going to end? What type of reservation are you doing? Are there better options than reservation? You know, so the conversations of cloud costs is endless. Did you over provision a resource and you just reserved it? Maybe you provision a resource for 1 year for reservation, and for 6 months you are using 30% of the resources. You are still spending a lot of money. So it's not like a one size fits all conversation. You have to continue to visualize, continue to optimize, continue to understand where the money is going. Okay, in accounting they call it chase the money. You need to be able to chase the money every time. You need to know where your money is going to per time, so that you know where to optimize your cost eventually. And like I said, Wendu UI can help you with this. So thank you very, very much for your time. That's all I have for you. And over to you, David. If you have any questions,
awesome.
You can send it on the chat.
Yes,
I will leave my
please,
link
please.
on Twitter and on LinkedIn on the chat so we can connect. But if you have any questions, I'm still here. And over to David. Thank you.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. I mean, it's just as I expected it to be. So just like you said, if you have your questions, please, you can begin to leave your questions in the chat room. And I think we can run the polls now. While the polls are up, please, if you have any questions, please leave them in the chat and leave them in the chat room. So like I said, we just want to get an idea of who we have here and what kind of services you use. What kind of services you use. And I'll just sort of be recapping on what Ewe has mentioned. I mean, all that he has said, really, there are 3 major things with cloud cost optimization, which is strategy, culture, and structure, right? You really need to have a strategy. And I think maybe Ewe might help me here as well. I think personally that a lot of the issues we have with cloud cost is a culture thing, right? So because we have moved from capex to opex when it comes to IT infrastructure. So just like he said, traditionally you buy your server, you've spent 100 billion, spent 100 million on your data center, on your server room, and it's there. Whether you're underutilizing it, whether you're overutilizing it, you have spent the money has gone out of your pocket, is there. So kind of like the prepaid we use for our airtimes. But then cloud comes along and tells you, oh, this is operational expenses. IT infrastructure is no more capex, now operational expenses. And you now need to really monitor. You now really need to have a structure, just like you said. You need to have a strategy. You need to have a culture of actually monitoring your cloud costs and acting accordingly, looking out for cost optimization opportunities. I think we can run the second poll as well, because that we're supposed to be doing that now as well. So let's run the second poll as well. The second poll, we just want to get more understanding of what some of the services that you use the most and what kind of challenges you're facing in your organization. So please, let's run that as well. Thank you very much. So we talked about structure. So some other cost optimization methods that we talked about: running serverless. Serverless is, I think it's because of a lack of skill and expertise, right? We have people running away from serverless because it really is a game changer, especially the simple Lambda function. You can imagine that we're running a website for up to 2 years and not getting any build. It's very possible if you know the right thing to do and you know what you're supposed to do. So running slides, he talked about data transfers, which is, like he said, it is transfer at the hidden charges. So when you have hidden charges in your bank statement, data transfers are the hidden charges. And a lot of people don't understand it. That's why sometimes into a cloud cost assessment with an organization, we'll try to make sure at the end of it that, look, it'll be cheaper having all your infrastructure on AWS. So we're not trying to sell AWS. Yes, we're AWS partners, but we're not just trying to sell AWS, but it is actually cheaper to have all your infrastructure running in one cloud environment as opposed to a multi-cloud environment, because you have to pay a lot of money when the traffic is going out of your cloud environment. He also mentioned adding resources. Like I said, we're going to have a very brief Wendu demo to show how Wendu helps you optimize your cloud costs. How Wendu helps you optimize your cloud costs and also improve your security posture management. And then here it talks about idle resources, underutilized resources. Questions, please. Do not have any questions yet, or do we have some? So no questions yet. Otherwise, session, that's good. I mean, it was that good. Well, no questions yet. So while we're still waiting for questions, let me just take a very brief detour away from the webinar and just share these opportunities with you guys. I'm sure maybe a few of us can benefit from these two opportunities I'm about to share. So, I mean, the first one is, give me a second. Talk about cloud billing, and I also want to talk about AWS Jumpstart program that is going this time. Sorry, I'm trying to sort out my screen. So as Cloudflex, so like I mentioned, we are AWS partners. This is just a very brief detail. And we offer what we call a cloud billing partnership. So now what are the benefits of cloud billing partnership? The benefits are you can get up to 20% of your annual cloud spend. You can get up to 20% of your annual cloud spend. So what we are going to be handling your AWS cloud billing for you. So you don't have to go through the stress of managing your cloud bills, managing invoices. Let's say you have different multiple AWS accounts. You don't have to go through the stress of managing all that different billing at the end of the month. We can help you, give you a simplified billing method. I think it has sent a question in. Okay, so let's just do it this way. So yeah, when you become cloud billing partners with Cloud Plexo, you can get up to 20% off your annual cloud spend. You can have localized billing options, which means you can process your AWS cloud bills in Naira as opposed to the USD. We all know how the Forex, we all know the risk with Forex right now. So Cloud Plexo, as your billing partner, helps you manage that Forex risk. And you also have cloud cost optimization recommendations from us as well. Wow, this is coming up. Cloud cost optimization recommendations from us as well. And also for AWS Jumpstart, for the AWS Jumpstart program, AWS is subsidizing any cloud project that you have, right? Up to 50% is being subsidized. So what that means is if you work with us as AWS partners, if you work with us on an AWS project, where if your project cost, let's say cloud migration cost is supposed to be 10 million, AWS subsidizes up to 5 million for you, and you get to pay only 5 million. So just putting that out there for anyone who is not aware of such opportunities. And if you are interested, we'll also send some interest form links to your inbox after the webinar. If you're interested, please fill out those forms. So let's get to the questions now. I think we have one from Ekpe. Ekpe says, please you help us. Ekpe says, what services would you advise for Android app developers? I'm new in the space and would like to hear from you. So what are you trying to develop, Ekpe?
Okay, yeah. So can I speak?
Yes. You can unmute your mic and also speak.
All right. Good evening, everyone. So I'm looking at developing fintech apps. Is where I particularly look to specialize in. So obviously, to involve a lot of transactions and such. So I just wanted to get a sense of, because I haven't really used AWS myself. So I just wanted to get a sense of what it would be like, of what running an app of that manner would be like on the service. Just like to get it, even if it's a small sense, that'll be fine. Thank you.
All right, Edward, do you want to help out with that?
Okay. Yeah. Hello. Thank you for your question. So running applications in AWS comes with there are different deployment models. We're not here to talk about deployment models, but I'll just chip in a little bit. So your deployment model will actually determine a lot of things. Okay. There is a service called, there's a service called AWS Amplify, okay, which is like a backend as a service. Okay, so when you say you are building fintech apps, is it mobile applications or web-based applications? But whatever you want to do, there are different services that can help you to do that efficiently. Okay, but you need to understand that these services have principles with which they work, and it's very advisable that you understand these principles before you get in neck deep in. Okay, so my advice to you is you can start out by maybe building your first application in the cloud in AWS using one or two of the services. I just mentioned AWS Amplify. It is a service that is very, very good for mobile applications and even the backend of a mobile application. And one of the reasons I would say you should go with Amplify is it's serverless. Amplify is also very, very cost effective, and you pay very little for massive scale massive availability, and it's serverless, so it means you don't have to manage anything. There are a couple of other options, okay, you can take, but Amplify for me, it's the go-to when it comes to mobile applications, even web applications too. So I hope I answered your question.
Okay, yeah, that's
you.
fine. So just a quick, is that I don't know if you put a link to your book anywhere. I'm just right now I'm looking for a lot of resources. So if you could tell me where I could find that, that will also be helpful. Thank you.
Okay, I put the link on the chat. So the book basically just helps you if you are someone who is trying to get into the cloud and you see a lot of these technical terms. I know I just mentioned Amplify and someone is saying, what is Amplify? You know, so what my book does for you is it's like a simpler Google, okay? Sometimes some of these definitions and explanations are not clear on Google. You still get confused. But what my book is doing is that it's making it simpler for you, using everyday things that you are used to explain and give examples of what the services are, what they do, and how you can apply them to your cloud journey or even your development journey as a software engineer. So basically, that's what the book does for you, and it makes your life getting into the cloud and DevOps much easier, because some of these definitions, when you go to AWS, when you go to Google, they give you what I call cyclic definition, like a repeated definition.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And of course, if you're having troubles trying to deploy your application to AWS, that's what we're here for. As we can help you achieve that. And yeah, just what about the AWS Jumpstart and also the cloud billing opportunities as well. I think we don't have any other questions. I can't see any other questions here. All right, so we have one last poll to run. So we said we're going to give a free cloud cost assessment session. So please, if you're interested, we just want to know who is interested in having a free cloud cost assessment session on their organization's cloud environment. So all what we've talked about, running serverless, idle resources, data transfers, and you don't know how to even start, where to start from, please let us know if you're interested, and we will definitely reach out to you to help you assess your cloud environment to make your cloud environment much more cost effective. So yes, we will come to a very brief demo of Wendu and how Wendu helps you optimize your cloud environment. I know where I had mentioned some of what Wendu helps you do. So Wendu is a software as a service platform. All you have to do is log in through your, I might get a network error. Log in through your web browser. Wendu integrates with your cloud environment. Wendu is also multi-cloud. You can integrate your AWS environment, integrate your Azure environment, and your GCP environment as well. So we will focus mainly, Wendu covers cloud security posture management and also cloud cost optimization. We're going to focus mainly on the cloud cost optimization aspect of things, and we'll focus on the aspects where it talks about how Wendu helps you identify idle resources. So this is the idle resource. When you're looking for cloud cost optimization opportunities, right? You want to make sure you can see every single resource in your environment that is idle. You want to make sure you can see every single resource in your environment that is idle, either on your Azure environment or on your AWS environment. You have so here you can immediately see some cloud cost optimization opportunities on this Azure environment. You can see recommendations here as well. Wendu also gives you recommendations on switching from servers, rightsizing recommendations as well. So you can, just like you said, we want to make this a culture. So every week, I come to my Wendu dashboard to see what's really going on in my cloud environment. So especially for non-technical CTOs, non-technical CIOs who don't really want to get into the AWS management console because it can get really confusing there. Wendu simplifies this process for you. You can immediately see which resources are being underutilized, which is another thing we talked about. You can see which resources are being underutilized. You can also see which resources are being idle. So by identifying this, you can know where you can have cost optimization opportunities. And that's not all. I mean, you can get your cost visibility quickly, just like I said, you can get your billing data up to date. You can get your cost data up to date. You can get your forecasted cost as well. Get your forecasted cost as well for the next month, for next 3 months, and also for the next, you can also get recommendation opportunities. I think I'm having issues with my network. You can also get recommendation opportunities. We currently do not have any recommendation opportunities for this environment, but if there were right-sizing recommendation opportunities, you definitely get that here. I think I have a better view on the Azure side of things as well. So you can quickly see any recommendation, cost recommendation. You can see security recommendations as well. And on the security aspect, we have a compliance check to make sure your cloud infrastructure is data regulatory compliance, right? You don't want to be paying hefty fees for easy things that Wendu can help you sort out. You can immediately see where you're non-compliant and you can also remediate that as well. And yes, for your IM, so this is just how Wendu can help you optimize your cloud costs. Wendu helps you automate certain manual aspects. Also, you also have your scheduler where you can also schedule your EC2 and RDS instances. So if you have a rigid schedule of how these instances run, you can immediately create schedule rules and make sure this instance, it runs from 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. by 6 to 6 p.m. by 6 p.m. It's done with it can go off rather than this just helps you reduce the human error, right? It automates this process for you. I think that's about it. So if you're interested, if you want to learn more about Wendu and how Wendu can help you optimize your cloud cost and also improve your cloud security posture, please, we can speak afterwards. So I think we've come to the end of today's session. I don't see any other questions. On the chat room. I think we've come to the end of today's session. Again, I'll recap from what Wera has said. We've talked about serverless computing as some of the methods to optimize our costs. We've talked about data transfers, looking at our data transfers. We've talked about idle resources, cost optimization models, over provisioning resources, and we've also talked about how Wendu can help you achieve this. Wendu reduces the time that you achieve your cost reduction goals in your organization. So normally it will take you 3 months to have a detailed look into your cloud usage so that you can see cost optimization opportunities. Wendu takes all of that manual effort out for you. Wendu does all the looking out for, Wendu does all the insights, all the data analysis, and just gives you recommendations to let you know that, look, you have underutilized resources here, do something about it. And so that's how Wendu helps you. And we have very great testimonials as well. When you're looking at cutting back on your cloud costs, you want to know where you can cut back on, and Wendu helps you achieve this. All right, so I want to say a very big thank you, first of all, to Ewere for taking out his time to speak to us about cloud cost optimization strategies, cloud cost saving strategies, especially in these times of economic uncertainties. We want to make sure organizations improve their profitability and improve bottom line, not just focus on the revenue. Revenue is good, yes, turnover, traction is good, but you also want to make sure your bottom line is good enough for investors to smile at your business. So thank you to everyone who has taken out time. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And there will be a post-meeting survey once you leave the Zoom, the meeting room. Zoom will open a link on your web browser. Tell us how the webinar went. If you had good value, if you did not have good value, that's okay. Please let us know so we can make the next one better. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.